One of the reasons that people undertake work on their culture, whether it's to change their culture, to manage their culture, to enhance their culture, is because the reputational risk today of individual employees or groups of employees behaving in some way inappropriately, whether it's to do with embezzlement, whether it's to do with lack of safety standards, whether it's to do with letting customers down in some way. The knowledge of those behaviours now spreads so quickly across the market through social media and so on that company reputations can be destroyed incredibly quickly. So as a result of that, organisations have to be particularly careful, and I think boards of directors have to be particularly aware to know whether or not the organisation does have that level of management in place, that it can say that it is actively managing the culture and it understands the underlying values that are common in the organisation and the patterns of behaviour that those values will produce.
I think when you think of an organisation, you think, well, at some point we'll need to get around to dealing with things like culture and the perceived soft issues in the organisation. But immediately the priorities are around the earnings and the performance of the company. Well, that's fundamentally flawed because without the right culture, you're never going to get great performance. And what we were able to establish is the linkage between the culture, things like accountability, and the output of that, which is great performance within the organisation. So if we hadn't spent the time with walking the talk and done the hard yards, there is no way that this company would be performing the way it is today. And that's made a real point of difference.
Culture development work has never been more important. Certainly not in my more than 30 years in the workforce. So I think almost everywhere I look, people are dealing with the same issues. Whenever you see a business that's struggling, it's invariably because it hasn't attended to its culture in quite the way it might have done. So I think in my view, it probably always was mainstream as an issue for leadership teams, but it certainly is now, particularly as we start to deal with a workforce that will be managed remotely, whether because they're working out of hotels in Singapore, they're working out of home, or whether we're in fact are working with people who are culturally diverse in other countries. And even though we're a domestically headquartered, or we're a domestic business, I've no doubt that in the future there will be members of our workforce who will be sitting in countries overseas on different time zones. So I think how you then build cultures that take account of all of those emerging trends will be critical to our success as businesses.
I think the speed of change that organisations are now having to operate at makes culture change, culture management, the understanding and conscious leadership of culture more important than it's ever been. I don't think organisations can afford now to leave to chance the patterns of behaviour that are existing in their organisation without feeling that, one, they understand them, two, they know what is driving them and whether or not they're controlling those, and three, that they can have confidence that in any given circumstance people will behave in a way that will do their business credit.